Hello and welcome back to the Data Privacy Lawyer. My name is Funmi Owolabi and I am the principal attorney at the firm. Today's review, we're going to be looking at some artificial intelligence terms. I've mentioned severally on the channel about the fact that the overlap between artificial intelligence and privacy, which is what we do at the firm, essentially is that in some capacity, data protection is going to overlap with the use of any artificial tool. Whether it's the username and password that you use to log into the tool, whether it's the training data that's utilized to train the AI model, in some capacity, personal data overlaps with artificial intelligence. I am yet to come upon any type of AI tool that does not overlap with data protection, which is why at the firm we provide services and advisory to organizations that are considering creating AI tools, integrating AI tools, or upgrading the current AI tools that are being utilized. So there's lots of different ways that AI can be imparted by businesses. So we provide advice on how to do that in a data protection compliant manner. So I wanted us to look at some of these AI features because from a transparency perspective, it's really important for businesses to let their consumers know what the AI is and how it interacts with personal data, because the data protection laws require businesses to be transparent. How is it that you use personal data? If it overlaps with how you use artificial intelligence, you need to be transparent about it. So I don't want to spend too much time on that. Let's look at these terms. So I'm just going to quickly hover over this and see what the products are. So the GoTo provides a business communication tool and also collaboration. So does like a webinar. I feel like this is like a product similar to Zoom. The GoTo terms of use for AI features are incorporated into and form a part of GoTo's terms and service. So when you as a business are entering into negotiations, meaning you've picked this particular supplier, or it's that you're doing your due diligence. And I've talked a lot about on the channel how a component of your privacy program should have vendor due diligence. If you are going to be using their solution within your organization, you should do due diligence before going into contract negotiations, because you need to make sure that any vendor that is going to process your personal data based on your instructions has a program that is aligned with your program. Let's say, for example, your business has a thriving privacy program. You've got all your ducks in a row when it comes to data protection, but you want to engage a supplier and then you don't do any due diligence, but you start going into the contract negotiation and you realize that this business has had several data breaches and they don't use different types of technical and organizational measures. They don't have a privacy notice. They don't have privacy policies. You put your business in jeopardy and you're still accountable for the data. So if you go ahead and you are like, we're going to go ahead with this supplier, even though we've realized during the contract negotiation they have no privacy program, you put your business at risk, because if that third party experiences any type of violation to the personal data that you've provided to them, you have to respond to a regulator, answer to any investigations, things like that. You put your business at jeopardy, and personal data is the lifeblood of every business. So you have to think very carefully about how you want to address allowing suppliers to provide your business a service. They govern your use of artificial intelligence, machine learning, or similar technologies which are developed and managed by third parties. So we've got third parties here. One question I would have if I was negotiating a contract for a business is, give me a list of the third parties that are developing and managing this AI technology. That's really crucial. And the other thing that this business should be providing to its customers is technical specifications related to the AI technology. In some geographies, it's called a model card. It depends on what the AI tool is. I don't know what constitutes AI technology here, but essentially there is a card that can be supplied based on the use of certain AI, and businesses can actually request that information because it gives you so much insight into how the tool has been trained, how it's been tested, what type of measures they have in place to make sure that the AI doesn't reflect any type of bias or discrimination. It really does depend on the AI technology, but it's something that you as a customer can actually request, and you should take a look at that when you do the due diligence. Ownership of inputs and outputs. GoTo AI-enabled features may provide output to you based on information that you provide to GoTo service input. And I presume, given that this is a webinar, we can see they do video conferencing, virtual training, webinar, and virtual event software. So just from looking at these three different tools, I am going to opine that at a minimum, there's going to be a couple of identifiers that are collected. One, maybe your name, because if you're meeting with someone, you might want to provide them your name. Two, if you're doing video, a non-biometric photo, and then audio or voice recordings. all of those constitute personal data. So I'm not sure how that relates to the input and output that they've listed here. The definitions are very broad. I find it very valuable for businesses to provide very in-depth definitions of what this might constitute. It might be below. Let me take a look. No, it's not. So what could the outputs or inputs be? Customers should have awareness of that, especially in the terms of use. Now, it may be that it's contained within the terms of service. There's no one way in which to do this. The reason why I think it would be valuable here is because these are terms of use for the artificial intelligence features. This would be a perfect place to list what might constitute an input and what might constitute an output outside of just this sentence. And I think that customers would find that valuable when they're doing their due diligence. Your inputs and the outputs based on your input are owned by you and form part of your content. GoTo retains all ownership of the AI algorithm, okay? Where inputs and outputs are processed by a third-party provider as part of the AI-enabled features. Now, something that I think would be valuable, and actually I'm going to quickly click on the terms of service towards the end of this review, but during the due diligence process, we should know who the third-party providers are, because based on data protection language, a third-party provider that facilitates your processor is known as a subcontractor. And under some data protection laws, I don't know where this solution is being offered, but in some geographies, there's a requirement for businesses to be transparent about who their sub-processors and subcontractors are. And that's really important when you as a customer do your own due diligence, but also for them to maintain their own obligations under the data protection laws. Something that's not generally provided on the public-facing websites is geography. Whenever I do these reviews, a lot of my insights are coming from looking at things on a global spectrum. But when I provide advisory to my clients, I always ask them to list the geography where their services and products are being offered, because that will influence the type of language that is contained within potentially the terms of use, the terms of service, and other privacy documentation that we've reviewed on this channel. I'm just going to scroll to the bottom. You can see here they've got a privacy policy. They've also got this do not sell or share my personal information. This gives me insight into the fact that this product and service is at least being sold in the United States, because this is a specific requirement under some US state privacy laws, right? Having this button here. We can also see that they've got cookie preferences, and at the beginning of this review, we saw that they had a cookie banner, which I failed to mention because this review is really about AI. I'm going to continue to focus on artificial intelligence on the channel because more and more it is becoming more prominently used in different organizations, whether it's that they're procuring it from a supplier like GoTo, or it is that they are building it internally. I think it's really important going into 2026 that businesses are aware of the implications on privacy for their use of artificial intelligence. And if you're ever looking for a privacy counsel to assist you in your review, whether it's from a contractual basis or from your program's compliance internally, you can take a look at the description below and I would be happy to provide advisory in that capacity. Okay, let's look at accuracy. GoTo is not responsible for the quality, accuracy, reliability, effectiveness, safety, legality, or security of AI-generated output. You acknowledge that GoTo services and the AI-enabled features are not intended to receive or process meaningful works of authorship, and the AI technology may generate the same or similar outputs for other users. I want to talk about this. So when we look at artificial intelligence, although there is an implication on privacy, we can see here that there is a discussion related to copyright, trademark. Artificial intelligence touches on so many different areas of the law outside of privacy. But there is still the privacy piece in that there is going to be some type of processing associated with personal data in any solution, in any product. Now, I am intrigued about the distinction between solution and product. Anytime I distribute an intake form to clients, I always ask them to list products and services, because how a product interacts with personal data may not be how the service interacts with personal data. I presume that there are different ways in which this product can interact from business to business. You have to look at things from use case to use case. When you are talking to a privacy counsel, you should always list all of the ways in which your products interact with the solutions you offer to your customers, especially if it could be different. If your product can be integrated in several different ways, that will influence the type of personal data associated with its interaction. You need to be able to account for that, not only on the supplier side because you have obligations as a data processor, but on the customer side where you have obligations as a data controller. Now, I'm just going to quickly touch on those two terminologies because they're very data specific. But a data controller essentially determines the means and purpose of processing. The data processor acts on the data controller's instructions. Under the data protection laws, each group, depending on where they fall, have specific obligations that have to be met, particularly when distributing things like terms of use and terms of service. Now, in this capacity, GoTo is considered the data processor. They are going to have specific obligations in that capacity. It may be GoTo also has its own instances where it is procuring services from a third party. They've mentioned that here. Where inputs and outputs are processed by a third-party provider, there may be obligations in their capacity as a data controller when they interact with a third-party provider. But without inside additional knowledge that has been distributed to their privacy counsel, that's not something I can opine to during this review. So I really hope you enjoyed this simple review. If you found a value in this, please thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and I will see you in another one.